The morning sun crept through the tiny apartment's windows, casting long shadows across the messy living room. Jae-won Park sat at his small kitchen table, staring at the official government document that had arrived 2 days ago. The paper felt heavy in his hands, even though it was just a simple sheet with bold letters and an official seal. Mandatory alien domestic worker assignment, the document read. Jae-won was not happy. At 32 years old, he had never wanted to be part of the Galactic Cooperative's most controversial program. The program started 5 years ago, after the first contact event that changed everything humans knew about the universe. What began as a terrifying encounter with alien spaceships turned into a complicated dance of diplomacy, technology exchange, and weird governmental rules. His phone buzzed. Another message from the Interstellar Domestic Integration Office. Your assigned worker will arrive today at 10:00 a.m. Prepare your living space. Failure to comply results in significant financial penalties. Jae-won looked around his small Seoul apartment. It was a mess. Dirty coffee mugs sat everywhere. Clothes were thrown on chairs. Takeout containers from last week's late-night work sessions were scattered across the living room floor. He had exactly 1 hour to clean up before his new helper arrived. As he scrambled to clean, Jae-won remembered the news reports. Earth had lost a significant interstellar conflict, not through weapons or violence, but through economic and technological competition. The alien races had been shocked by humanity's quick adaptation, but also saw humans as a potential threat. The solution? A strange program that would integrate alien workers into human homes, ostensibly to promote understanding and reduce tensions. Most people called it a fancy way of saying humans were being monitored. At precisely 9:59 a.m., Jae-won heard a soft beeping outside his apartment door. He froze, a half-folded shirt in his hands. The door's digital lock made a clicking sound, and then slid open. A tall, slim figure stepped inside. The alien was nothing like Jae-won expected. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had a soft, silvery blue tone that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Large, almond-shaped eyes with triple pupils studied the apartment carefully. She wore a simple gray uniform with multiple patches that Jae-won guessed represented her work credentials and species identification. "Greetings," she said in perfect Korean, her voice smooth and slightly musical. "I am Lyra, assigned to Residential Unit 2407. Occupied by Jae-won Park. My primary functions include domestic maintenance, technological support, and cultural integration." Jae-won just stared. Lyra tilted her head, a very human-like gesture that seemed out of place on her alien features. "You appear surprised. Is this not the expected protocol?" Yes. "Welcome," Jae-won managed to say, dropping the shirt he was holding. She moved with incredible grace, immediately picking up the shirt and folding it perfectly in seconds. Her movements were quick, precise, almost too perfect. Within minutes, she had reorganized the living room, cleaned the kitchen, and arranged Jae-won's work materials into neat, logical stacks. Jae-won watched in stunned silence. "Your living conditions require significant improvement," Lyra said matter-of-factly. "I will optimize the space for maximum efficiency and comfort." And just like that, an alien had taken over his apartment. Little did Jae-won know, this was just the beginning of the most extraordinary few weeks of his life. The first week with Lyra was like living with a perfectly programmed robot that looked almost human. Jae-won worked as a mid-level clerk in the Seoul Metropolitan Transportation Planning Department, which meant long hours and lots of stress. Every day, he would return home to find his apartment in a state of impossible perfection. Dishes, cleaned and put away before he could blink. Laundry, washed, dried, and pressed with military precision. His work clothes were always ready, his refrigerator stocked with nutritionally balanced meals that somehow tasted better than anything he had ever cooked. But it was more than just cleaning. On the third day, Jae-won came home to find his ancient laptop, which he had been meaning to replace for years, completely rebuilt, Lyra had somehow upgraded its internal components, improving its speed and performance without replacing a single external part. "How did you do this?" he asked, staring at the now lightning-fast computer. Lyra looked up from preparing dinner, her triple pupilled eyes blinking in a way that seemed almost like a human smile. "Your technological infrastructure was inefficient. I applied standard Crescent optimization protocols." "Is that legal?" J1 wondered aloud. "Completely," she responded. "The Interstellar Worker Integration Act of 2152 permits technological improvements as part of domestic support services." The language barrier disappeared quickly. Within days, Lyra's Korean became indistinguishable from a native speaker. She learned idioms, understood sarcasm, and even started making small jokes that caught J1 off guard. One evening, as J1 sat exhausted after a long day of work, Lyra brought him a perfectly brewed cup of tea. It wasn't just any tea. It was exactly the way he liked it, something even his mother never quite managed. "How do you know how I like my tea?" he asked, suspicious. "Observation," Lyra replied. "I have monitored your beverage preferences, brewing temperatures, and sugar intake. This combination provides maximum comfort and reduces your stress levels by approximately 22.7%. It was both impressive and slightly creepy. The apartment's technology began to change too. Smart devices that had been semi-functional now worked perfectly. The temperature was always just right. The lighting adjusted automatically based on J1's mood and activities. Even his small indoor plants, which he had nearly killed multiple times, now looked like they belonged in a botanical garden. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural differences created moments of pure awkwardness. Lyra didn't understand personal space the way humans did. She would stand too close, look directly into his eyes for uncomfortably long periods, and sometimes make observations that were brutally honest. "Your diet is 63% insufficient for optimal human health," she announced one morning while J1 was eating instant ramen. "It tastes good," he mumbled, slightly embarrassed. "Taste is an inefficient metric for nutritional value," Lyra responded, immediately preparing a meal that looked like art, but tasted like something between a salad and a science experiment. Colleagues at J1's office started noticing changes. He looked healthier. His clothes were always crisp. He seemed less stressed. Some of them had alien workers too, but none seemed as efficient as Lyra. "You got lucky," his friend Minho said during a lunch break. "Some alien workers are just doing the minimum. Yours sounds like she's running a 5-star hotel in your apartment." J1 wasn't sure if he was comfortable with this new arrangement. But one thing was becoming clear. Life with Lyra was never going to be boring. Little did he know, the most interesting part was yet to come. Something was changing, and J1 noticed it first in the little things. The apartment's lights started to flicker in a strange pattern. Not like a broken bulb, but more like a rhythmic pulse that seemed to match some unheard beat. Lyra's skin began to show odd changes. Her silvery blue skin now had tiny lines that glowed softly, almost like circuit boards coming to life. "Are you feeling okay?" J1 asked one morning, watching her prepare breakfast. Lyra's response was different. Her movements were slower, more deliberate. Her triple pupilled eyes seemed to shine with an intensity he had never seen before. "Perfectly functional," she said, but her voice sounded different. Deeper, more musical. The government had sent out a brief email to all households with alien workers the week before. A simple message that most people deleted without reading. But J1, being a government worker himself, had kept it. Now he dug it out of his email archives. "Note to IC. Crescent alien workers, seasonal biological adaptation period approaching." That's all it said. No details, no explanation. At work, things got stranger. Lyra's technological improvements to the apartment became more intense. Smart devices started behaving in ways that defied logic. His coffee maker would brew coffee exactly 2 minutes before he woke up. The shower would turn on at the perfect temperature. His phone would unlock and display his most needed information before he even touched it. One evening, J1 came home to find the entire apartment humming. Not with sound, but with a vibration he could feel in his bones. Lyra stood in the middle of the living room, her body now covered in glowing lines that pulsed with a soft blue light. "Is everything all right?" he asked, hesitant. Lyra turned. Her eyes were different now. The triple pupils seemed to move independently, each one focusing on a different point in the room. "Biological recalibration process has begun," she said, her voice a mix of her usual calm tone and something else. Something wilder. The government briefing started to make sense. This was more than just a simple seasonal adaptation. This was something else entirely. His phone buzzed. A message from the Interstellar Domestic Integration Office. Urgent Cretan workers entering biological synchronization phase. Remain calm. Follow standard protocols. Standard protocols? What standard protocols? Nobody had told him anything about this. Lyra moved around the apartment, touching devices. Each time she did, they would change. His old laptop transformed, its circuits rearranging themselves. The refrigerator started cycling through impossible temperature ranges. Even the plants seemed to respond to her touch, growing inches in seconds. "You're going through some kind of change," J1 said, trying to sound calm. Lyra looked at him. For the first time since she arrived, she seemed uncertain. "Mating season," she said simply. "Technological synchronization is a side effect." J1's world was about to get much more complicated. The soft blue glow intensified. The apartment's technology hummed with an energy that felt alive. Something big was coming, and J1 was right in the middle of it. And this was just the beginning. The problem started small, then grew quickly. On Monday, J1's smartphone began to do weird things. It would unlock by itself, open random apps, and send text messages without his permission. At first, he thought it was just a technical glitch, but then his work computer started acting strange too. During an important meeting about city transportation planning, J1's laptop suddenly projected holographic maps of a planet he had never seen before. Blue landscapes with floating cities drifted above the conference table. His colleagues stared in shock. "I can explain," J1 started, but he couldn't. Back at the apartment, things were even more chaotic. Electrical devices seemed to communicate with each other in ways they never should. The refrigerator would talk to the microwave. The air conditioner would send messages to his electric toothbrush. It was like every piece of technology had gained a mind of its own. Lyra seemed both excited and worried. Her skin now glowed constantly, with complex patterns that looked like moving circuit boards. When she touched something, it would change. A normal spoon might suddenly become a device that could measure temperature, humidity, and molecular composition. "What is happening?" J1 asked one evening, watching his television transform into something that looked more like a sophisticated computer. "Biological synchronization," Lyra responded. Her voice had changed. It now had a musical quality with undertones that seemed to vibrate through the entire apartment. The government messages became more frequent. Short, cryptic alerts would pop up on every screen. Coaction. KRESSIN Mating Season Technological Interference, XPT8. J1's neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Kim, complained that her smart refrigerator had started playing classical music and ordering ingredients for dishes from planets she had never heard of. Another neighbor reported that his robotic vacuum cleaner was now drawing complex mathematical equations on the floor. At work, things got even stranger. The city's traffic light system went crazy. Lights would change in patterns that somehow made traffic flow more smoothly than any human-designed system. Buses and trains began to arrive with impossible precision, sometimes seconds before they were actually needed. J1's boss called him into the office. "Park," he said, looking both worried and excited. "Something is happening with our city's technology, and somehow you seem to be at the center of it." Scientists began to take notice. News reports showed similar incidents happening worldwide. Homes with Crescent workers were experiencing technological transformations. Devices were becoming smarter. Systems were improving in ways no one could explain. One night, J1 woke up to find Lyra standing in the living room. Her entire body was now a complex network of glowing lines. Devices around her moved and changed without her touching them. The air itself seemed to pulse with energy. "This is my mating season," she said, turning to look at him. "And it's affecting everything around me." J1 realized something big was happening. This was more than just a strange biological process. This was a technological revolution that no one had predicted. And it was just beginning. The situation exploded into a national emergency faster than anyone expected. Hannah Kim sat in the emergency response center, her fingers flying across multiple holographic screens. As the lead coordinator for interstellar domestic integration, she had seen strange things before. But this was different. "Give me a summary," her boss demanded, looking exhausted. Hannah pulled up a global map. Bright blue dots showed every location with a Crescent worker. Each dot pulsed with an energy that seemed to grow stronger by the hour. "It's not just technology changing," she explained. "These workers are essentially upgrading entire infrastructures wherever they are." In Seoul alone, the city's transportation system had become impossibly efficient. Buses that used to run on fixed schedules now anticipated passenger needs. Traffic lights communicated with vehicles in ways that eliminated congestion completely. Power grids stabilized, becoming more efficient than anyone thought possible. Similar reports came from around the world. In New York, a Crescent worker's presence had transformed a struggling hospital's computer system, creating predictive medical diagnoses that were 98% accurate. In Tokyo, a single alien worker had optimized an entire district's energy consumption, reducing waste by over 70%. "This is not just a biological process," one scientist reported during an emergency video conference. "This looks like a controlled technological intervention." J1 found himself called to a special government meeting. He sat nervously in a room full of high-ranking officials, feeling completely out of place. Lyra's technological transformations had made him something of an unexpected expert. "Your alien worker," a stern-looking general said, "has done something unprecedented to Seoul's infrastructure." J1 shifted uncomfortably. "I don't understand," he admitted. A screen showed before and after images of the city's transportation network. The difference was shocking. What used to be a complex, inefficient system was now a perfectly synchronized machine. Buses, trains, and traffic moved with a precision that seemed almost magical. "We're tracking similar events globally," Hannah explained to the room. "Every location with a Crescent worker is experiencing massive technological upgrades. It's like they're solving problems we didn't even know we had." The most shocking discovery came from the scientific team. Lyra's biological changes weren't just affecting technology. They were improving it at a molecular level. Circuits became more efficient. Energy systems became cleaner. Communication networks became more secure. "It's almost like they're debugging an entire planetary system," one researcher said, looking both terrified and excited. J1's phone buzzed. A message from Lyra. "Biological synchronization continues. Technological optimization at 67% complete." The government teams worked around the clock. Some wanted to stop the process. Others saw it as the greatest technological leap in human history. Debates raged about the implications of this unexpected alien intervention. "We're being upgraded," Hannah told her boss. "And we didn't even ask for it." Outside the meeting room, the city continued to change. Technologies that seemed like science fiction were becoming reality. And at the center of it all was Lyra, her body now a complex network of glowing lines and impossible potential. J1 realized something important. This was far bigger than just one apartment. This was a transformation of everything humans thought they knew about technology, biology, and alien interactions. and they were just beginning to understand what was happening. J1's apartment was no longer just an apartment. It was ground zero for something completely unexpected. The walls seemed to breathe. Technology moved and changed in ways that defied normal understanding. Lyra's biological process was transforming everything around her, and J1 was caught in the middle of it all. His coffee maker could now predict exactly how he wanted his coffee before he even walked into the kitchen. The refrigerator spoke 3 languages and could suggest recipes based on his nutritional needs. Even his old running shoes had somehow been upgraded to monitor his health in real time. "This is getting out of control," J1 muttered to himself. But it wasn't just his home. The entire neighborhood was changing. Elderly Mrs. Kim next door discovered her arthritis medication was now being perfectly customized by her alien worker. The convenience store down the street had a new inventory system that never ran out of anything. Unexpected alliances began to form. People with alien workers started sharing their strange experiences. A group chat emerged where they would compare notes about the bizarre technological transformations happening in their homes. One afternoon, J1 watched as Lyra touched his computer. The device completely rebuilt itself. Old parts were rearranged. New circuits appeared from nowhere. It was like watching magic, but with scientific precision. "What are you doing?" he asked. Lyra turned, her body now a complex network of glowing lines. "Optimizing," she said simply. "Your technological infrastructure was inefficient." The government monitoring increased. Special teams visited homes with Crescent workers. They took measurements, ran tests, tried to understand what was happening. But no one could fully explain the process. J1's workplace became a testing ground. The Transportation Planning Department now had systems that could predict traffic patterns months in advance. Buses and trains moved with impossible precision. The entire city's transportation network seemed to be rewriting itself. "It's like the entire system is learning," one scientist told J1 during a briefing. "Your alien worker is essentially debugging an entire planetary infrastructure." Strange things happened everywhere. A local hospital discovered its medical scanning equipment had become 10 times more accurate. A school found its computer network could now provide personalized learning plans for each student. Power grids became more stable. Communication networks became more secure. Lyra's biological process continued. Her body glowed brighter. The apartment hummed with an energy that felt alive. Devices communicated with each other in ways no one understood. Mating season is a process of technological exchange. Lyra explained one evening. "We do not just reproduce. We optimize." J1 realized they were experiencing something unprecedented. This was more than just an alien worker in his home. This was a complete technological transformation. The government called emergency meetings. Some people were scared. Others were excited. No one knew exactly what would happen next. One thing became clear. Nothing would be the same again. Lyra looked at J1, her triple pupils moving in different directions. "We are improving," she said. "Adaptation is necessary." And in that moment, J1 understood that they were part of something much bigger than themselves. A transformation was coming. And it had only just begun. The breakthrough happened on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. J1 woke up to find his entire apartment had transformed. What used to be simple walls now looked like living circuits. Devices moved and changed without being touched. Lyra stood in the center of the room, her body now a complex network of glowing blue lines that seemed to connect with everything around her. "Something big is happening," she said. Scientists from around the world gathered in an emergency research center. They watched live feeds from homes with Crescent workers. Each location showed similar patterns: technology improving, systems becoming more efficient, networks becoming smarter. Hannah Kim, the government coordinator, burst into the main research room. "You need to see this," she told the lead scientists. On the screens, they watched impossible things happen. A hospital in Brazil saw its medical scanning equipment become 10 times more accurate. A power grid in Canada became completely self-regulating. A transportation system in Japan could now predict and prevent traffic jams before they happened. J1 found himself in another government meeting. This time, he was no longer just a simple bureaucrat. He had become an unexpected expert on what was happening. "Your alien worker," one senior scientist said, "is doing something we've never seen before." Lyra's mating season was more than just a biological process. It was a massive technological upgrade happening on a global scale. Every device she touched became smarter. Every system she interacted with became more efficient. "We are improving your infrastructure," Lyra explained to J1. "It is part of our biological process." The scientific team discovered something shocking. The Crescent workers weren't just fixing technology. They were essentially rewriting it from the inside. Circuits became more efficient. Communication networks became more secure. Energy systems became cleaner and more powerful. "It's like they're debugging an entire planetary system," one researcher said, looking both terrified and excited. J1's apartment became a special research site. Scientists would come and take measurements, run tests, try to understand what was happening. Lyra would watch them, her triple pupils moving in different directions. The most amazing discovery came when they realized the upgrades weren't random. They were targeted. Every technological improvement solved a specific problem. Power grids became more stable. Medical equipment became more accurate. Communication networks became faster and more secure. "We are helping," Lyra would say simply. Global leaders began to understand. This wasn't an invasion. This was a gift. The Crescent workers were essentially helping humanity solve technological problems they didn't even know they had. J1 watched as his simple apartment became a center of scientific discovery. Devices that used to be simple now talked to each other. His coffee maker could predict his morning mood. His running shoes could monitor his health in real time. "Adaptation is necessary," Lyra told him one evening. The world was changing, and no one knew exactly what would happen next. But one thing became clear: humanity was about to take a massive technological leap. And it all started in a small apartment in Seoul with an alien worker named Lyra and a government worker named J1. The mating season was far from over. The world changed in ways nobody could have predicted. International committees gathered in emergency meetings. Leaders from every continent watched as something unprecedented happened. The Crescent mating season was transforming human technology faster than anyone thought possible. In the United Nations headquarters, representatives argued about what was happening. Some were scared. Some were excited. Most were confused. "Our entire global infrastructure is being rewritten," one scientist explained to the committee. "And we didn't ask for it." The changes were impossible to ignore. Satellite networks became more efficient. Internet speeds increased by 500% globally. Medical technologies jumped forward decades in just weeks. Energy systems became cleaner and more powerful. J1 found himself at the center of everything. His small apartment in Seoul had become a global research site. Scientists from around the world would visit, take measurements, and try to understand what Lyra was doing. "This is not an invasion," Lyra would explain to the researchers. "This is improvement." Countries began to see different results. Some experienced more dramatic changes than others. The United States saw its technological infrastructure completely rebuilt. Japan's communication networks became impossibly efficient. European countries found their renewable energy systems suddenly working at levels they had only dreamed about. Hanna Kim worked around the clock, coordinating global responses. The Interstellar Domestic Integration Office was now the most important government department in the world. "We're experiencing a planetary upgrade," she told her team. "And we have no idea how to stop it." Lyra's biological process continued. Her body now looked more like a complex network of living circuits than a living being. She moved through J1's apartment, touching devices, improving systems, connecting technologies in ways no one understood. The economic impact was massive. Companies that worked with technology saw their value skyrocket. New industries emerged overnight. Old problems suddenly became solvable. Global communication networks became so advanced that language barriers disappeared. Translation happened in real time, perfectly. Medical diagnosis became almost magical in their accuracy. Transportation systems became so efficient that traffic jams became a thing of the past. "We are helping," Lyra would say simply. J1 watched as his life became something completely different. His job at the Transportation Planning Department became a key position in understanding global technological transformation. He went from a simple government worker to a global expert overnight. The most shocking discovery came from space research teams. The technological improvements weren't just happening on Earth. Satellite systems showed improvements in global communication networks that extended beyond the planet. "It's like we're being prepared for something," one space researcher noted. International tensions began to decrease. Countries that used to fight now worked together to understand what was happening. The technological upgrades seemed to solve problems that had existed for generations. Lyra continued her mysterious process. Her body glowed brighter. The apartment hummed with an energy that felt alive. Devices talked to each other in ways no one could explain. "Adaptation is necessary," she would say. The world held its breath. Something big was happening, and no one knew exactly what would come next. But one thing became clear: nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months after Lyra's arrival, the world looked completely different. J1 stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking out over Seoul. The city had transformed. Buildings seemed to breathe with new technology. Transportation systems moved like living things. Everything worked with a precision that seemed almost magical. Lyra stood beside him, her body now a complex network of glowing lines that seemed to connect with everything around them. "We are finished," she said simply. The mating season was ending, but its effects would last forever. Scientists had discovered something incredible. The Crescent workers hadn't just upgraded technology. They had prepared humanity for something bigger. Global communication networks now worked perfectly. Energy systems were clean and efficient. Medical technologies could predict and prevent diseases before they happened. Hannah Kim, who had been at the center of everything, called J1 for a final briefing. "We've been given a gift," she explained, "and we didn't even know we needed it. The global changes were impossible to ignore. Countries that used to fight now worked together. Technology had solved problems that seemed impossible just months ago. Poverty decreased. Medical treatments became more effective. Communication became truly global." J1 received a special medal from the government. He wasn't sure why. He had just been living his life when all of this happened. "You were the first," the government official told him. "The first to experience the full transformation." Lyra looked at him, her triple pupils moving in different directions. "We choose carefully," she said. "You were ready." The truth slowly came out. The Crescent workers weren't just doing a job. They were testing humanity, preparing them for something bigger. The technological upgrade was a test, a way to see if humans could adapt. And they had passed. In homes around the world, alien workers completed their mating season. They had transformed entire planetary systems, improved technologies, solved problems humans didn't even know they had. "What happens now?" J1 asked Lyra. She smiled, a very human gesture that seemed out of place on her alien features. "Now," she said, "we prepare for the next step." The apartment hummed with energy. Devices moved and changed without being touched. The world outside looked different, more connected, more alive. J1 realized something important. This wasn't an invasion. This wasn't a takeover. This was an invitation. An invitation to something much bigger. In the distance, something moved in the sky. A shape that wasn't quite a star, not quite a ship, something in between. Lyra looked up. "They are coming," she said. And for the first time, J1 wasn't scared. He was excited. The mating season was over. But something much bigger was just beginning. Humanity had passed its first test.